Blind Justice presents a hero and a city with secrets hidden by the cloak of night. What's Done in the Dark, the audio drama.
The air hung heavy in the apartment, thick with anticipation. It was as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting for something to break the uneasy calm that had settled over the place.
I can't shake this feeling, this sense of impending doom. It's like a storm is brewing just beyond the horizon, and I'm powerless to stop it.
Daniel wheeled himself around the small living room, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm against his chair's armrests. The repetitive motion was his only outlet for the anxiety that gnawed at him from the inside. Nugget, his faithful German shepherd, lay at his feet, head tilted, watching his human companion with knowing eyes. The dog seemed to sense Daniel's unease, his ears twitching at every creak and groan of the old apartment. Shadows stretched long and thin from the blinds, giving the familiar space an almost sinister feel. The interplay of light and dark seemed to mirror the turmoil within Daniel's mind.
I can't shake this feeling, this sense of dread. It's like a shadow that follows me no matter where I go.
Daniel couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his gut like a lead weight. Every passing second felt like an eternity, each tick of the clock amplifying his anxiety. The call. He was waiting for the call, the one that would either bring relief or plunge him deeper into the abyss of uncertainty, the one that would send him back into the heart of the darkness that had become their lives, his and Dominic's. The thought of what lay ahead was almost too much to bear. The thought of Dominic, his blind mentor facing danger without him, sent a shiver down his spine. Dominic had always been the strong one, the guiding light in the darkness. But now, the roles were reversed, and Daniel felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He picked up an old photo of Dominic, the two of them smiling, unaware of the trials that lay ahead. The memories were bittersweet, a reminder of simpler times, but there was no time for nostalgia. Daniel knew he had to be strong, not just for himself, but for Dominic. The call would come, and when it did, he needed to be ready. As if on cue, the phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the silence. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever news awaited him on the other end of the line. He answered, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Hello?" The word hung in the air, a fragile bridge between the present and the unknown future. Whatever happened next, Daniel knew one thing for certain. He would face it head-on, with Nugget by his side and Dominic in his heart. The uneasy calm was just the beginning. The sharp jangle of his phone cut through the silence, making him jump. The number flashed on the screen. Dominic.
Hey, did you find him?
A heavy silence followed, punctuated by the distant sounds of traffic and Dominic's strained breathing. Finally, Dominic's voice came through, low and urgent. "We found Christian and Andre is hurt. But Irving needs you, Daniel. Nugget too." Night had fallen upon Ravenhurst, shrouding the city in an inky blackness that mirrored the turmoil brewing within Daniel. The streets, usually bustling with life, seemed deserted, the silence amplifying the roar of blood in his ears. Buildings loomed on either side, their dark windows like the vacant eyes of slumbering giants.
Find him, boy, find Irving.
The shepherd whined softly, his keen senses already picking up the threads of their quarry's scent. With a determined breath, Daniel steered his chair down the sidewalk, the rhythmic clatter echoing in the stillness. A cacophony of noise assaulted his ears as they neared Ravenhurst City Hall. A sea of people surged before the building, their angry chants rising above the wail of sirens and the frantic barks of police dogs. A rally. Mayor Rashad. It all clicked in Daniel's mind. He remembered Dominic's intel Irving, a community organizer, a thorn in Rashad's side. Daniel maneuvered through the fringes of the crowd, Nugget weaving effortlessly at his side, his body a reassuring presence against his leg. The air crackled with tension, the bitter scent of tear gas stinging his nostrils. He had to find Irving, and fast. Whines insistently, tugging at his leash.
Nugget's ears pricked up, his body stiffening. He whined again, this time more insistently, tugging at his leash. Daniel followed his gaze, his eyes scanning the crowd. There, standing on the makeshift stage, his voice booming through the loudspeaker, was Irving. But something wasn't right. Nugget was agitated, his usually calm demeanor replaced by an anxious alertness. Danger, he could sense it too now, a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. "What is it, boy?" he whispered, his hand tightening on his leash. Nugget barked once, sharp and urgent, his dark eyes fixed on a point above the crowd. Daniel followed his gaze, his heart plummeting to his stomach. Perched on the roof of a nearby building, almost invisible against the night sky, was a figure clad in black. The glint of moonlight on metal, a sniper rifle. His breath caught in his throat. Irving was the target. He had to warn him, but the words wouldn't come out. His tongue felt thick and heavy in his mouth. Time seemed to slow down, every detail etched in horrifying clarity. The sniper's steady hand on the trigger, the crosshairs settling on Irving's chest, the oblivious crowd cheering their leader's words.
A deafening crack split the night, the sound echoing off the buildings. A collective gasp rose from the crowd as Irving crumpled to the stage, a look of shocked surprise on his face. Nugget barked again, a mournful sound that tore at Daniel's heart. But then, an impossible thing happened. Irving didn't fall. Instead, a ripple ran through his body, starting at the point where the bullet struck his chest. His skin, once brown and smooth, shimmered, morphing, hardening. In the blink of an eye, it was no longer flesh and blood, but cold, impenetrable metal. Panic erupted. The crowd, transformed into a terrified mob, surged and bucked, desperate to escape the unseen threat. Police whistles shrilled, cutting through the screams and shouts. Daniel, his initial shock giving way to a desperate urgency, yelled Irving's name, his voice lost in the chaos. Nugget, sensing his intent, surged forward, his powerful body parting the crowd like a ship's prow. Daniel clung to his leash, his heart pounding against his ribs as they pushed their way towards the stage. He had to reach Irving. He had to understand. The stage was empty, the makeshift podium overturned. Papers were scattered across the floor, and the once neatly arranged chairs were now in disarray. It looked like a scene from a chaotic event, something that had gone terribly wrong. And there, in the center of it all, stood Irving. He was the only figure amidst the chaos, a solitary presence that seemed both out of place and yet perfectly fitting the scene. He was encased in metal, his features, once warm and expressive, now frozen in a mask of cold, hard steel. The transformation was startling, as if he had been turned into a living statue, a monument to some unknown event. He looked like a statue, a metallic guardian sculpted by the hand of some otherworldly artisan. The details were intricate, every line and curve meticulously crafted, giving him an almost lifelike appearance despite the cold material.
Irving? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Is that really you?
Daniel stared, his breath catching in his throat. He'd never seen anything like it. The transformation was beyond anything he could have imagined, a blend of horror and fascination that left him rooted to the spot. Nugget whined, nudging his hand with his head as if to ground him. The loyal dog sensed his distress, his soft whimpers a reminder of the reality he was struggling to grasp. He took a shuddering breath, fumbling for the small handheld device strapped to his chair. He had to scan him, had to understand what he was seeing. The device was his only hope of making sense of the anomaly before him. His hands trembled as he activated the scanner, the soft hum of the machine a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the stage. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of readings and data that he struggled to interpret. He knew he had to stay focused, to push through the shock and confusion. This was his chance to uncover the truth, to find out what had happened to Irving. As the scanner continued its work, Daniel's mind raced with questions. What had caused this transformation? Was Irving still aware, still conscious beneath the metallic exterior? And most importantly, could he be saved? The answers seemed just out of reach, tantalizingly close yet frustratingly elusive. He glanced at Nugget, the dog's eyes filled with a mix of concern and determination. They were in this together, and he knew he couldn't give up. Not now, not when they were so close to uncovering the truth. The scanner beeped, signaling the end of its analysis. Daniel took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever the results might reveal. This was it, the moment of truth. He looked down at the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. The data was complex, filled with unfamiliar terms and readings. But amidst the confusion, one thing was clear: Irving was still alive. The realization hit him like a wave, a surge of relief and hope that brought tears to his eyes. They had a chance to save him, to bring him back from the brink. And with that thought, Daniel knew they had to keep going. No matter what it took, they would find a way to save Irving. The device hummed to life, its screen flickering with a dizzying array of numbers and symbols as it analyzed Irving's transformed state. The room was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows on the walls, and the only sound was the soft, rhythmic beeping of the device. It was a marvel of modern technology, designed to decode and understand the complexities of Irving's new form. The data it displayed was incomprehensible to most, but to those who knew how to read it, it told a story of transformation and power. Irving's metallic head turned, his eyes glowing with an internal light, fixing on Daniel. The glow was not just a simple light, it pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive, reflecting the intensity of Irving's thoughts. Daniel felt a shiver run down his spine as those eyes bore into him, as if seeing through to his very soul.
"You got some nerve waving that thing at me." Irving's voice was laced with a mixture of anger and curiosity. The device in Daniel's hand was not just any gadget, it was a key to something much larger, something that Irving both feared and desired.
Irving's voice, distorted and metallic, boomed through the air. Daniel swallowed, his mouth suddenly dry. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe. He knew that one wrong move could spell disaster, not just for him, but for everyone he cared about.
Andre sent me. Daniel's voice was steady, but there was an underlying tension that he couldn't hide. He hoped that invoking Andre's name would be enough to sway Irving, to make him see reason.
He managed, his voice barely a whisper. Irving tilted his head, the metal plates of his face shifting with the movement. The sound of metal on metal was almost deafening in the silence of the room. Irving's expression was unreadable, a mask of metal and light that gave nothing away.
Andre's hurt. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Irving's eyes narrowed, the glow intensifying as he processed the information. There was a flicker of something in his gaze, something that Daniel couldn't quite identify.
He stated more than asked. Daniel nodded. The nod was more than just an acknowledgement. It was a plea for help, a silent cry for assistance in a situation that was spiraling out of control.
He needs your help. Daniel's voice was urgent, almost desperate. He knew that time was running out and that Irving was their only hope. The weight of responsibility was almost too much to bear, but he had no choice but to push forward.
A tense silence stretched between them, before Irving spoke again. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of their shared history and the uncertain future that lay ahead. Each second felt like an eternity, the silence almost unbearable.
Take me to him. Let's finish what we started. Irving's voice was resolute, filled with a determination that left no room for doubt. The alliance was forged not out of friendship, but out of necessity. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by a common goal and a shared destiny.